Ayman Khan here, 4 seconds out. It's been a while. Good to be joined back with top trainer James Ali Bashir. James, how's things in the USA?
Everything is good. Everything is good.
Good,
Thank, thankfully.
good to hear. And Vlad Sirenko was out recently, got the victory again too. What's the latest with Vlad and his ascent to the top?
Uh, Vlad is just right now. He's just working out, getting ready. We anticipate boxing on Dubois Joshua's undercard. That's what we were anticipating.
When you say you're anticipating that, how far down the line is that possibility?
We anticipate to be on the undercard to Joshua versus Dubois. We don't know against who. As we don't have the opponent yet, but the 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 management told us to prepare for that. That we most likely will be on that card.
That's a huge opportunity for Vlad, who won't have been in a fight of that magnitude, in a arena of that magnitude. You feel he's ready for that opportunity?
Yes, I know he is. I know that he's ready for it. He's longing for the opportunity to prove himself that he belongs. That it's been so difficult getting there. We just have to keep plugging along, trying to take the fights that we can get. We've been prepared on 2 or 3 different occasions, and 2 or 3 different occasions we've been disillusioned.
For those who haven't seen him in action, how do you describe him as a heavyweight fighter?
I'll put it like this: Vlad Sirenko is dependable. I know that he's going to fight when that opportunity comes. I know he's going to fight. That's why I've invested so many years into him. I know that he's going to fight. I know he's waiting for the opportunity because he works so hard. He works so hard now, and I just hate to disappoint him when the fights don't come through. But again, there's not a lot of guys that wishes to take the chance to fight with him. I mean, it's like it's always been. Nobody is breaking down doors to box with a young guy, undefeated, hard puncher like Vlad Sirenko.
Let's get to that main event though that he might feature on the undercard, that being Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois, who you were drafted into camp for when he fought Oleksandr Usyk. How do you feel he fares against Anthony Joshua?
This is a very intriguing fight. Again, I think this is a 50-50 fight. I think this is a short fight, but very explosive. I think that whoever hurts the other first, that the one that gets hurt will not survive it. It will not come out of it. So it's a very intriguing fight. It's a 50-50 fight, in
When
my
you
opinion.
when you say that it's a short fight, I assume that you mean because of the power that both fighters carry. Who has the edge in power for you?
I can't really say. I really can't put a percentage on that because I haven't been hit by either one of them. But I know that Anthony is a powerful guy, and I know that Daniel Dubois is a very, very powerful puncher. I've held the mitts for Daniel Dubois, and I can tell you he's got some kick, you know. And I had Vlad Sirenko spar with Daniel Dubois in Russia. Daniel Dubois and Vlad Sirenko sparred. We were in the Oleksandr Usyk camp, and Vlad Sirenko told me that Daniel could punch. So he's a respectful puncher. Uh, Joshua's a very respectful puncher, and I've been in each of those guys' camps, and I've seen what they can do in sparring. I've seen that they can the effect that their punches has on any given opponent.
When were you in AJ's camp?
I was in AJ's camp The first time I was with AJ in camp was when he boxed Wladimir Klitschko,
Hmm.
and AJ's camp 2 years ago. I was in London in AJ's camp.
That's right. I remember that. Remember when the news filtered out. Let's go back to the camp for Klitschko. What were your memories of watching AJ back then, and how different is he now?
He's he's um he's settled into being a professional, but still power doesn't change. Power just adds on, you know. He was a powerful guy then in those days as a young guy, and he's even more powerful now.
Did you predict back then that he would ascend to, the top of the heavyweight ranks as he has done now? Obviously, he's battling out with Usyk and Fury, but he still remains to be a very, very viable contender.
I had a sense then. Nobody knows what the future holds, but I had a sense then from witnessing him box Vladimir Klitschko. I said that this guy's going to be right there. He's going to be right there in a couple of years, and as it turns out, he was.
What about the other side to it? Maybe some of the flaws to his game, because that was a roller coaster of a fight. That fight with Klitschko, and we saw AJ for all his prowess. We also saw, the right hand land after he unleashed a barrage on Klitschko, and he had to really kind of ride out some of the storm. Do you feel that Dubois he'll have those moments against Dubois as well, or is he too schooled for Dubois?
I don't care how schooled an athlete is. A one punch in the heavyweight division can change the outlook of a fight. One single punch can change the outlook of a fight. So his recuperative skills will have to be front and center in that fight. Both of them, their recuperative skills will have to be front and center in that fight because anybody can be hurt at any given time, especially in the heavyweight division.
One of the key differences for AJ as well, too, not just age, is also that he's drafted in Ben Davison to be the lead in his camp now, and Ben is giving AJ, I guess, more ways or different plans to succeed, and also watching a lot more tape on his opponents to give him an idea of what to expect there. Do you feel that's the right course and way to plan for a fight, especially against Dubois?
Well, Emmanuel Stewart and I, we used to sit for hours and we would discuss fights and different fighters and different styles. And would tell me, he said, it does not matter who the trainer is in the corner. Certain steps that a trainer can take with a fighter. But in that moment of truth, the fighter has to pull himself out of trouble. He has to dig down himself when he gets in trouble. And AJ was in serious trouble in the Wladimir Klitschko fight. And he pulled himself up by the bootstraps, got back in the fight, took over and won the fight. I think that the referee was really quick to pull the trigger in the stoppage of the Wladimir Klitschko fight, because if you look back at those at that fight on the ropes when AJ was throwing those punches, very few of, if any of those punches landed. But the climate was right for the referee to stop. The referee stepped in and stopped the fight. But if you just go back and examine that last round, look at the punches that AJ was throwing, those punches weren't landing. But I guess the climate was right to stop the fight because Wladimir was a little excited, a little exhausted. So nobody complained about it, not even Wladimir. So yeah, I think that it was justified. But Emmanuel will tell me, said that, at a certain time in a fight, he said the fighter got to pull himself out. So I don't think Ben Davis or anybody else is going to help him if he gets hit by Daniel Dubois clean. He's going to have to ride the storm out and pull it out himself.
When Joshua fought Klitschko, he was 27. Now at the age of 26, Daniel Dubois is taking on Anthony Joshua, who's now 34 years old, I believe it is. Um, at both those stages, though, Joshua at 26 and now Dubois at 26, who are you more impressed by? Forget the accolades, just in terms of the boxing skills and the power as well, too, I guess. Who are you more impressed by?
I'd have to say Daniel Dubois because of what he has done, what he has gone through since the Oleksandr Usyk fight. Like I said, I wasn't the one that took the punch from Daniel Dubois versus Usyk. But Usyk said the shot landed low. The powers that be ruled it as a low blow. So we have to live with the idea, the concession that yes, the fight was the blow was low, but looking back on it, it's still a debatable point in my mind that the blow was low. But again, I didn't get hit by the punch, so I don't know. But I think that I'd have to go with Daniel Dubois because he's the younger guy. He's the guy that has shown great progression in the last 3 fights, including the Usyk fight. I thought that Daniel could have gone on to make a better statement of himself had he stayed in the fight. But in my opinion, I think that Daniel was angry and he was aggravated by the non-call, the non-ruling in his favor. And I think he was angry and I think he was emotional. And I think he just stopped fighting, I'll stick by that statement to this day. I think that had he rolled the storm out, hey, God only knows what might have happened. Alan Mike Weaver versus John Tate. You just got to ride the storm out. But Daniel grew from that. I think he grew from that fight, and that's what I'm resting on now.
Going back to the Dubois camp in the time that you had with Daniel, outside of his power, what does he do so well?
Daniel consumes knowledge well. When you give Daniel a task to complete, he's leaning in on it. He's really trying to reach that goal. If you're trying to give him, he tells him, look, Daniel, I want you to hook off the jab and follow right. He's going to keep trying until he gets it, That's what I noticed about him in the time that I worked with him in the camps.
How much of his father's influence was there in the camp? Because a lot of people are kind of saying now, off the back of how he beat Hrgovic and Jarrell Miller, the father's presence was there more so in the corners. Do you feel that he needs that in the Joshua fight, his presence of his father in the corner to help will him on?
It's always good to have a family support, and me for one, I don't necessarily embrace the idea of fathers and sons. Sometimes it works, but more often it doesn't work. I think what Daniel Dubois needs to do is embrace the tutelage of Don Charles. And he needs to embrace that tutelage. He has to believe in that tutelage. I'm not saying that, don't embrace the father's knowledge because the father is the one that raised him from childhood. But raising a young man from childhood is far different from a boxing match. In a boxing match is you have to dot every I and cross every T. And it would be best served by paying close attention to Don Charles. That's what I think. Now the father is a good guy, he's a good guy and he's good for Daniel, but to an extent. But you got to let the professionals do their job. And Don Charles is a professional. He's paid his dues. This is his chance in the spotlight. Let him do his work. That's what I'm thinking. And I think that Daniel Dubois needs to pay close attention to Don Charles and listen to him closely, because this is it. This is the defining moment. You're the champion of the world, and you have to embrace what Don Charles is telling you. You know, and I wouldn't. If asked the question 1,000 times, I'd say the answer to that is Don Charles. He's got to embrace Don Charles. He's got to embrace Don Charles. He's got to embrace him, because there's no room for error. You know, the father, even if the father wanted to take on the task of being a trainer, this is just not the fight to do it in.
Going back to those Joshua camps that you were involved in, so for the Klitschko fight, it was with Robert McCracken as the lead trainer there, and then for the second fight with Oleksandr Usyk, it would have been Robert Garcia. What were the main differences that struck out to you about the Joshua of then and then the Joshua the second time round?
Major stumbling block with the people that he had in his corner in both of those fights. Robert Garcia didn't have any credentials to be in there with a heavyweight at that level. You know, like I said, training in heavyweights is far different from training any other weight. You know, you're in there with a mammoth of a man, you know, inside of a ring. It is just not It's just not like training a welterweight or a lightweight. It's just a far different task to pull off. I just think no, you can't go to. I mean, Ben Davis, he's all right. He's a young guy and he's still learning. You know, you don't just come into boxing and become Wonder Boy overnight. You have to work. You have to labor. You have to be in those situations. Ben Davis didn't really have to climb. He had Tyson Fury. I know of. I don't know about him training any other heavyweights, you know. And now he's training this young man, Anthony Joshua. But I think that the accolades that he's receiving, I think they're a bit hyped. You know, you have to work. You have to labor to learn what you're doing in boxing, you know? If Anthony Joshua comes through, a lot of the credit will go to Ben Davis. But if he fails, then a lot of the criticism will go to Ben Davis. That's just the way life is. You know, everybody loves a winner. So, you know, you got Ben Davis, he's sitting on the fence. He's got to come through. If he comes through this one, then everybody's going to say, oh, Ben Davis is a great trainer. But I know for a fact, you know, September will be 57 years I've been training professional boxers. And I've made a living out of it. You know, I've made a living out of being right and in some cases wrong, you know, but more right than wrong. And I learned through stumbling and tripping and trying to climb the fence and falling back down. So I learned from it. And Ben Davis and everybody else, even Don Charles, they'll all have to learn. But one thing that I did do, I got under the old school trainers and I asked questions and I took notes, mental notes in my mind. Whatever I asked them, I took mental notes, and it was always in my mind about the do's and don'ts of boxing. So here's a fight, you know, a 50-50 fight that anybody can win it. You know, I'm looking forward to this fight, and we're going to find out who's who.
And in either of the time, there's been a lot of when Joshua versus Dubois was announced or rumored, at least, it's been resurfaced the story that Daniel Dubois, when he sparred with AJ, he either badly hurt, you know, knocked down, or even knocked out Anthony Joshua. I just wonder, in the time that you had in the camps with AJ, did you see that spar? Did you see any of the sparring? And What were some of the stories you
No,
took from the spars?
no, I did not.
Okay.
But in my mind, much to do about nothing. That was then, and this is now. You know, and I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. You know, which you did. How many years was that ago? 10, 15?
It'll be less than that. It'll probably be around 5, 6 years ago.
Much to do about nothing. Much to do about nothing. Everything changes in those 5 or 6 years.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't want to resting on my laurels that I'm not Anthony Joshua anywhere. I'd erase that from my mind. I wouldn't even think about that. I would think about the task that I'm faced with now and the Anthony Joshua that I'm faced with now. And there will be no room for emotions in this fight because one click. I think this is a short fight. I think it's an explosive fight, but I think the fight will be short. And Daniel Dubois cannot be getting hit with those same right hands that he was getting hit with by Philip Ergovic. He took some clean right hands from Philip Ergovic. He can't take those same right hands from Anthony Joshua because there's a difference in power.
Have you seen the clip of Joshua and Dubois? They're in a face-off, and Dubois says, "Look, we can go now if you want." And Joshua took umbrage to that. He wasn't happy. He said that he was being disrespected, and he was threatening to throw a chair in the face of Daniel Dubois if he went further with that call out. Did you see that clip? And a lot of people have made comment about AJ's mentality for good and for bad, but I wonder where you stand after having seen that clip from Anthony Joshua.
Again, much to do about nothing. If I were the trainer for either one of those guys, I would keep them away from that kind of nonsense because that has nothing to do with the fight.
Hmm.
You could talk all you want. You can whistle in the dark all you want. We still got to get in the ring and fight. And that's what I would have my charge paying attention to. The fact, the night when we get in the ring, stay away from the emotional stuff because it doesn't mean anything. It's for the novice fan, that means everything. Did you see that? Did you see this? Did you see that? But it does not mean anything at the box office. It does not mean anything at the bank. It doesn't mean nothing at the box office. You got to do the right thing and stay focused on the task at hand. I would just leave that alone and I would steer them away. I remember Wladimir Klitschko at press conferences and weigh-ins and stuff like that there. No one else in the camp would say anything, but I always stepped in and said, listen, stop it. You know, I would just put my hand in between him and push him back, say, hey, man, just walk. And a lot of times, Wladimir would not want to move, but I was always the one to initiate the break because it's just a lot of useless energy, a lot of useless emotion being burned up. You still got to get in the ring and fight. That's what I want you to concentrate on, getting in the ring and apply what you've been taught.
I wonder if you made or taken put any attention to some of Carl Froch's criticisms towards Anthony Joshua. And a lot of people have called Daniel Dubois the Q word quitter for his efforts against Joe Joyce and for some against Usyk later on in the fight. But Carl Froch has been critical of AJ, called him a quitter for how he dealt with the Andy Ruiz fight. Do you see that side of what Froch is saying, that Joshua does potentially have that in him?
You know, the first 3 amateur fights that I had, I lost those fights. I got beaten up pretty bad in those fights, you know, the first 3 times I tried boxing. But it wasn't that I quit. I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was in it with more experienced guys. I was just in there with more experienced guys. You know, you can't choose a place to start in boxing. You just come in where you fit in. I didn't quit. I wanted to tear those guys' heads off, but as it being as it may, those guys were more experienced, more knowledgeable, and the application was better. I was just a young guy out there flailing punches, and I got exhausted. You know, I got exhausted mentally. I got exhausted physically. but I stayed in the saddle and I came back and I started learning how to box, you know. So I wouldn't dare call any fighter at any weight a quitter because I'm not the one there taking those punches. All right. So I stay away from ever saying that a guy quit. You know, no, that's not me. And I don't think that Daniel Dubois is a quitter because if he was a quitter, I learned a long time ago. I was training a young man, Maurice Harris, and he had got stopped in a fight, and people were going around New York and New Jersey saying that Maurice Harris was a quitter. And old trainer Tommy Parks told me, he said, no. He said, you stay with that guy. He said, one day you're going to make a lot of money with that guy. And I said, well, how do you know that he's not a quitter, you know? He said, because every time he's so-called quit, he comes back to the gym and he gets back in with these big punches. And that tells me that this kid is not a quitter and that he's going to go far. And sooner than later, I turned him into the #1 contender twice in one career. And that's highly unlikely. He lost both times, but he did make it to the #1 status, you know, so you can't call a guy a quitter. If you're not in there taking those punches, you can never call a guy a quitter.
Well said. Just the last couple of things for myself. Since we last spoke, there was a video that leaked of Tyson Fury appeared to be drunk and stumbling out of a pub heading into the rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. I wonder if those images, he's come out and said, look, it was just one night. I needed a blowout to just, you know, let things kind of loose and have a bit of fun. But did those images concern you?
Not at all. Not at all. He's just a young guy, and he's making mistakes that young men make. Tyson Fury is still a force to be dealt with in the heavyweight division, and anybody thinks that he's not is making a big mistake. He's just a young guy. I mean, each one of us at some point, you can look back on your life, and even here, in the privacy of my own mind, there's so many things that I look back on, you know? So many things I look back on and say, damn, why did I do that? Why did I make this decision? I shouldn't have did that. So young people now, you know, that's 15, 18, 20, 21, 22, 20, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But you got to be able to recognize that they were mistakes and try to enhance your credibility by not making the same mistake twice. So I don't think that Tyson Fury that does anything to diminish who he is and what he is. He's a fine fighter. He's a threatening fighter. And he's lethal if you allow him to be. And I know that Oleksandr Usyk will not be facing the same Tyson Fury in the rematch. But in the same breath, Tyson Fury won't be facing the same Oleksandr Usyk. Just like Tyson Fury is going to go correct his flaws, Oleksandr Usyk is going to go back and correct his flaws. So it will not be the same fight for either guy. But if I had to lean towards either guy, I'd lean towards Oleksandr Usyk because he's the consummate professional. Tyson is not. Tyson takes these breaks to blow off steam. Oleksandr Usyk does not take breaks to blow off steam. Oleksandr Usyk takes breaks to concentrate on getting better.
Usyk has said recently in an interview with the 3 Knockdown Rule podcast, he said, look, I'm going to have this rematch with Fury, and then I'm going to probably drop down to cruiserweight and go try and pick up the undisputed titles again at cruiserweight. What do you think of that step if he does choose to go that path? And what does that do for his legacy, considering that there might be more fights at heavyweight for him to have?
Well, he made complaints about having to eat so much to maintain status at heavyweight. And you can't blame a person for that. You know, he's watching out for his safety, his well-being. You know, he does not like gorging himself. And I can tell you that from the time that I trained him. I trained him for 3 years. Constantly, we were together in Kiev, Ukraine. And I can tell you, this guy never ate a lot of food. He's not an eater. He just don't like gorging himself to maintain his status at heavyweight. So he says, "Now look, I'm going to beat this guy, and then I'm going to go back to cruiserweight because you can't argue with a guy trying to watch out for his health. He does not like gorging himself to maintain his ability at heavyweight. He's a natural little guy. He's a natural little guy, but he's a strong guy. And now everyone understands that when I say that Oleksandr Usyk can hurt you, now everybody's on and on. And when he hurt Tyson in that fight, he hurt him bad. Did you see Tyson's eyes when he went against the ropes? His eyes said, "I'm hurt and I'm in serious trouble here." And if it had not been for that referee, I think that he would have knocked Tyson unconscious. When Tyson fell against those ropes, he was gone, And now everybody, including Tyson Fury, now they're not laughing at me. When I told them that Oleksandr Usyk can hurt you, I know the guy. I worked with the guy 3 years. I know the guy can punch. And he's a strong guy. He's stronger than what people give him credit for. He's deadly when he's strong. When he gets you hurt, he's going to finish you. He's going to finish you. That's Oleksandr Usyk. Now, all of a sudden, everybody is calling me up saying, "You were right. You were right." Of course I'm right. Idiots, man. I told him, this guy can hurt you. If you go in there underestimating his power, he can hurt you. Now everybody understands what I'm saying, including Tyson Fury.
Just very lastly, if he does take that...
Excuse me.
Go on.
You know how we talk. And I told you that this guy could punch. If he gets a clean shot in, he could hurt Tyson Fury. Remember, I told you that.
Mm-hmm.
And you see what happened? Did you see his eyes when he hit those ropes? He was gone. He was in another zone. If it had not been for that referee stepping in when he did, he shouldn't have broke the momentum of the punches. Even though, when you sag against ropes, it is legally a knockdown. But I think at that time, because of the momentum that Oleksandr Usyk, I think that he could have let that go. I think he could have worked. I think he should have let that go and let it play out. He saved him.
Very lastly from myself, what might that do if Usyk does choose to finish up at heavyweight and move back down to cruiser? Now, the drop or in change in weight won't be different, but some might remark that, Roy Jones Jr. made a similar sort of weight up and then back down after a fight to take on Antonio Tarver and ended up on the losing end and wasn't the same after the fact. Can he learn any lessons from what Roy Jones Jr. did, or is it a completely different situation?
I think it's a completely different situation. I think that Oleksandr Usyk is more concentrated than Roy was. Roy had a lot of things going on at that time, a lot of distractions, at that time. So I think that this is a more concentrated, more calculated situation with Oleksandr Usyk. Like I said, Oleksandr Usyk is the consummate professional. He's not going to make those errors. Believe me, Oleksandr Usyk is examining the Roy Jones situation before he makes that move to go back down. Oleksandr Usyk is already examining what happened to Roy Jones. He's already examining the ramifications of what could and might be when he goes back down. But he'll do it in a fashion where it does not hurt him. Trust me, Oleksandr Usyk knows what he's doing. And he's, like I said, he's a consummate professional. He's one of the most unique guys that I've ever trained in my career as a boxing trainer. And people say, "Oh, why do you give Oleksandr Usyk so much credit? This and that." I give credit where credit is due. The man is good. The man is great. And I kept telling everybody. And now everybody has called me saying, "You were right." Of course I'm right. Of course I'm right. I know my business. I understand. And I know a unique talent when I see one. And if I ever work with a unique talent, Oleksandr Usyk is that unique talent.
James, a pleasure is all mine. It's been great to catch up with you. Looking forward to that next conversation. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you on that undercard with Vlad Sirenko for Joshua versus Dubois.
Be in London on that undercard with my charge, Vladislav Sirenko. I'm really looking forward to that because this young man needs a break. He needs a chance to get out there. You know, I really want him to get this opportunity to show his wares. You know, he's been in there with some good guys, with some big punches. He's been in there with the who's who. Michael Hunt.